apparatus. I haven't actually used
It is a little bit tricky.
Yeah.
Hi, Sally.
Hi.
How you doing?
Very well, thank you. Yeah, great to see you in Melbourne.
Good to be in Melbourne. Would
Excellent.
you mind giving us your intro, please?
So I'm Sally Coggle, and I'm really delighted to be doing this today. And I'm shooting on a Leica Q, and it's a fixed 28 lens. And that's what I've been shooting on for probably the last 4 or 5 years, maybe even 6 years. I've got really used to working with it, and it's kind of like just an extension of me now.
I love it.
Yeah, so
I can see the wear and tear on it. It looks beautiful.
It's definitely been loved. It's
Yes.
a tool. I feel very special to have one of these, but it is very much a tool. It's just kind of part of my working life on the street, and it's small enough that it can come with me anywhere. I take it out every day. It lives kind of beside my bed almost, not quite, maybe on the kitchen table, but yeah, it's a really big part of my extension of me.
Extension your
these days.
personality.
Yeah.
I love it. Love to hear that. So it's a Friday here in Melbourne. We're out, and you're saying that Fridays are usually days that you come out to shoot in the CBD.
Yeah, I do. I still work doing what I do for a living, but yeah, Fridays is my day out, and I try to make sure I come into town and see what's going on. Sometimes there might be a rally, sometimes there might be just people on the street. Usually I'm on my own on a Friday because I have that little bit more flexibility than some others, and so it's kind of a good way to explore new areas, you know, disappear into the streets. And
Unbelievable.
yeah.
Where do you usually start when you come out on Fridays? You were saying you start at Flinders Street?
I do. I start at Flinders Street, which is in front of us here. We're about to head over there. And part of the reason that I shoot here is a bit of a sketch pad for me. It's sort of a place where lots of things are happening. People are moving in all different directions. They're coming out of a dark space when they've just travelled here. It's an iconic location. And it just gives me the opportunity to fire a number of frames really quickly and kind of get my head in the zone, if you like. And there's always really interesting, different people here, crossing the road. You know, it's a fun kind of place to be.
What are you looking for? So when you're looking for interesting characters, is there, like right now I've got my hand up covering my face from the sun. Is there a cue that you look for in body language, what they're wearing?
A mixture of things, definitely. Sometimes it's the gestures that are being made. It might be that people are saying hello to one another. It might be that somebody's hair's backlit and it's, you know, standing up on end for argument's sake, or the wind's really strong and it's going across their face. Someone might be in a really colourful outfit. There are sometimes spruikers on the centre court here, and they will be handing out things or, you know, megaphones with stuff going on. So it's usually interesting looking people that I'm going for. That could be colour, it could be someone's nose, it could be a hat, it could be, you know, a family wearing all the same clothes.
Love it.
Yeah.
Is this something that you've been doing? So I think you were mentioning you've been doing this for 4 to 5 years, making photos?
I've probably been shooting about 10 years, but
10 years.
more focused in the last 4 or 5 years.
4 or 5
I
years,
guess,
okay.
yeah.
Have you kind of knew where you wanted to start with photography and this style that you currently have, or is this something you've developed over time?
So I've always been interested in people, and I don't think I really started on the street. I didn't even know what street photography was. I very much like to tell stories, and so I would say documentary was probably what began for me.
Okay.
And wanting to string together half a dozen frames or a dozen frames that actually told a story. And it then kind of spilt into the street, where, because the street is so accessible, I can walk outside my front door, and there's people and there's things going on, and I'm really curious about how the streets are used. You know, in Melbourne, the streets are used very, very differently to what they are in another country. In Melbourne, people are generally commuting, so they're moving from one place to the other, and they're quite focused about that, getting across the road into wherever they're going. Whereas other countries, they live in the streets, you know, and they use their streets really differently. So I guess it's that human element that interests me most,
Human
and I
element.
think we're kind of curious creatures that do odd things and we don't even know we do it. Like this lovely lady in a hat. It's amazing.
There you go. Wow. I feel like Melbourne, I think I said this to you earlier, Melbourne there is, maybe because I'm new to Melbourne, a lot more interesting characters than Sydney. I've got framed you better a little bit. There we go.
Okay.
Anyway, that was amazing.
Yeah, so that's what I like about this corner as well, is you get so many different sorts of people that are coming past you endlessly and they're moving in and out of light. Yeah.
Would you be standing here at this moment?
I
or
generally stand over the other side.
do we want to cross
Yeah,
then?
let's cross the road.
Let's cross the
over
road.
these people and yeah. So I can see a lady in a hat.
Wow.
So sometimes it can be quite a lot of standing around here, most definitely. I wait for things to happen, and obviously there's a lot, people will gather on either side of the road, so then I can kind of have a little look through the crowd, knowing whereabouts the light is going to kick in. There's a big shadow between one side and the other, so I want to have them as they pop out of those shadows, and then the backgrounds get simpler, which is kind of nice. Yeah.
I saw you took a couple of photos as we were crossing, and you kind of took a step down and got very close to people's faces. Are you doing zone focus at the moment, or are you doing?
I'm actually on auto at the
Autofocus
moment,
at the moment? Okay.
And partly because I wasn't sure how we were going to unroll, but sometimes I'm zone focusing and
Okay.
sometimes I'm on auto.
Autofocus.
I probably use auto a little bit when it's going to be things that are at a distance to me and things that are tight. So
Okay.
it gives me more flexibility.
Is it pretty reliable on autofocus as well, you feel?
You miss a few things,
Miss a
but
few things?
I'm pretty fast with the. I have like a 1-point sharp element, and I'm pretty fast at moving it to where I
Okay.
need it to be, and I know where I've left it, so I know what's going to be working. I do miss things, no question about that, but
But you know your tool well enough to get the most out of it, so that's
yeah,
perfect.
definitely. It's faster, obviously, if you're zone focusing. You don't have to worry so much, but I miss things in that too.
And that too.
Yeah.
Yeah, we all do. How much time would you usually spend in a corner like this with the light? You relying heavily on the light and how it's changing? Is it a bit of, if you're not seeing what you're looking for, do you
Then
move
I
on?
move on,
You
yeah.
move on, okay.
I think I could be here for anywhere between 15 minutes to an hour and 15 minutes.
Oh, wow.
It really just depends on how much is coming through, what how the light sits in the area. There's a time of year that I first came here to start shooting, and that was during, sorry, I spotted someone in a lovely hat.
Hey, I'll follow you. We can stop mid-conversation. You go and do what you got to do.
I love your hat. It's so beautiful. So beautiful.
Because it comes from Edinburgh.
Oh, does it? Oh, that's nice. Do you come from Edinburgh?
Are you?
No, I said do you from
Oh,
Edinburgh?
no,
Very nice, thank you.
There you go. So you mentioned this a little bit to me earlier when we were having a coffee. You do converse with your subjects sometimes. Can you walk me through kind of where that came from? How do you approach it? And you also said you're an introvert, so I don't understand how you manage as an introvert. So I'd love to hear about this.
I think there's some things you can teach yourself and you realize that they help you. And although I think I'm naturally an introvert, I also am quite social and I do really enjoy having conversations with people. So perhaps my downtime is more introverted, but when I need to, I step
switch it
into
on.
another part of myself that allows me to connect with people and perhaps opens an opportunity for me to maybe take another group of shots or even just have a nice conversation with someone.
Yeah.
That lady's hat was from Edinburgh and she bought it when she was on holidays there. So, that's kind of a simple example, but sometimes I end up in these great conversations and it's a nice shared moment. Yeah.
And I think you were mentioning as well, you do take photos kind of before and then maybe during as well. So it's still candid, and you don't lose that element of surprise, right? You still use the conversation in a way that you're respectful, you're having a conversation, but you're also taking a photo.
Yes, yes. And I'm very honest about the fact that I'm taking a photo.
Right.
I don't
Try to hide it.
Yes. There are times whereabouts I'm observing what's happening on the street and I'm perhaps melted. My camera's become another character in the scene and I've sort of disappeared a little bit. But if I'm deliberately going to be taking a portrait of someone, I don't try and hide it.
Yeah.
Yeah. They can say no and I won't take it. If I take something and they don't like it, I will remove it if they insist. Often they don't. They just kind of go, oh wow, I never sort of saw that, or that's an interesting thing to do.
I love that. I don't think I'll be able to ever do what you do from approaching someone cold and having a conversation with them, especially taking a photo. It makes me nervous just thinking about it. So
Yeah. I think people are actually internally, like it might be a surprise what you're doing, but when you approach them with kindness and with a smile and, talk to them, generally people are really open to doing things. Yeah.
Did you ever feel that fear before? Was it something that came to you? Yeah?
Yeah, no question. And there's definitely days whereabouts I don't have as much confidence as others. It's but sometimes it just takes one really nice moment that happens where you realise that it's okay, and then I can do it all day. It's just about breaking the ice, and I think that part of the reason I come to Flinders Street Station is, I said a sketch pad before, but it's also like an icebreaker. It means that there's all these different characters, everyone's got a different story, and one of those people will be okay with that I can take a picture of, and that'll give me confidence for the rest of the session. Yeah.
How many, is there I'm just thinking, how often do you approach your subject and how often you don't? Does it depend on the situation, depending on what the subject is wearing? How do you decide that in your head?
So I don't have a lot of conversations, but that lady, I was very close to her and I didn't want her hat fully down. I wanted it up a little bit. So that meant that when she looked up, I had a camera in her face. So I felt like it was important that I acknowledged that moment and that I just didn't steal a moment. I actually acknowledged that I was taking a photograph, and that's why I connected with her.
That makes sense.
Otherwise, I wouldn't have done that. You might have seen me take a photograph of the lady before her, and I didn't engage with her because I felt like I didn't need to. Yeah.
I understand
it's
that now.
It's reading the body language, and also not abusing somebody or not letting them feel like they were in some way taken advantage of. I don't want to take advantage of anyone. And I want them to go away with a nice feeling, so the next person that puts a camera up to them gets a shot as well.
So you're passing on the good vibes to the rest of us. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Appreciate that.
We've got a reputation to uphold. There's so many street photographers out there these days. Why would you be awful to somebody and give them a bad feeling?
Of course,
yeah.
Of course. I feel like for the most part, most of us are pretty good people. I don't think a lot of us we don't go out to cause bad feelings for anyone. We go out because we love what we do. We want to capture the moments.
Yeah, so true. We do. We really, I think there's a real community strength that we all believe in doing the right thing and looking out for each other and being considerate of the people that we're taking photographs of. We're in a public space. We need to respect other people. And,
absolutely.
Yeah. I got a tongue that time.
Did the older gentleman, did he put his hand up to the camera or was he just kind of waving at you? I didn't realize.
I think he was just waving. I didn't actually get his hand in it at all.
Okay.
So I must have taken the photograph and then maybe he said
just
hello because he knew I
gotcha.
took a picture. Yeah, potentially. I'm quite drawn to old characters.
I think it's something with the nostalgia that we see in older photography, and then we're trying to recreate it today. That's how I feel anyway. I don't know if I'm projecting my thoughts into you, but I feel the same. Hats, umbrellas,
Hats,
newspapers,
Yeah.
anything that looks older, I find interesting.
And the other thing is that generally I think some of the older generation are well dressed. They
Yes.
wear jackets.
Yes.
They wear shirts. And I feel, I think I'm drawn a little bit to that as well. Yeah.
What are your thoughts around, I don't know if there's any legends that you look up to from a photography perspective that are not around anymore? Any icons that used to be around 30, 40, 50 years ago?
Yeah, so there definitely are. Actually looking at, so like even Vivian Mayer.
Vivian, oh, she's incredible.
I mean, I feel really sad for her that she never really realised how incredibly talented she was.
Yeah.
I really like her work because I identify with the emotion that she creates in her work, which I don't think everybody's capable of. There's an intimacy in her work that not everybody sees. And so you can look at a frame and you can feel what that person's feeling. And I think that's pretty powerful. So yeah, Vivian Mayer is definitely one person. I mean, Gary Winogrand, I think he's, I actually think there's a little bit of Gary in me sometimes, the way I fumble around to pretend what I'm doing so as it looks like I'm an idiot, but actually I'm taking photographs. Perhaps not putting film in the camera, but I'm definitely sometimes looking a bit odd. I've probably got plenty. One of my heroes is William Klein. But he talks to all of his characters, and well, not all of them, but a lot of his characters he talks to. I think he's quite extroverted, and you'll at some stage talk to Renata, and Renata is a little bit like the gregariousness of what William Klein was like, and drawn to lots of fun characters and things. So,
right.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming you've probably studied their work. You know their photos really well.
I do know. Well, I have certain photographs that I really recognise. Yeah, definitely.
Do you feel like subconsciously, this is again, I'm projecting my thoughts and just trying to converse with you on this. I think about the times back then. You were talking about the way people were dressed: newspapers, umbrellas, button-up shirts, jackets. And we don't see that as much today. We see people a lot more casual. I mean, I'm wearing a jumper with jeans and ridiculous tennis shoes.
Yeah.
How do you think this is going to age? Do you think we'll look back in 40, 50, 60 years and we'll see today's fashion? Do you think we'll feel the same way about it? Like, I think it'll be interesting to see people holding phones, because I assume in the future that people are just going to be, I don't know, a chip. Yeah, something in the ears, some glasses.
I think that might be amazing.
Yeah.
I hate seeing people constantly
looking at their phones,
and looking down as they.
But back then it was newspapers, right? Back then people would look at. So I wonder if those photographers were like, that man is on his newspaper, or that lady is looking at the newspaper. I wish that looked up. Do you feel like they had? I mean, I know I
feel like this time will be documented like every other time, and that's partly why we take photographs, to document the era we live in. And I think there's been a really big, change in people's lifestyles. COVID has also brought about more casual clothing, even more so than what perhaps the street scene created through skating or other things. Australia particularly is a really relaxed kind of lifestyle, and I think our lifestyle has actually influenced how we dress. I mean, the whole surf scene and the skate scene, they have had a big impact, and even sport, on how we dress. I'd like to see people a little more dressed up, but, even I'm pretty casual these days. And I just think we're documenting our era. Yeah. And we'll all look back in 20 years and go, weird, that's strange. We had those cars and those shoes and
these brick phones in people's hands. That's what I'm hoping. I'm hoping that as we document this, it's not novel to us because we see it daily. But in 20, 30 years, like you said, people will look back and go, oh, look at those funky tennis shoes, or the cars that we're driving back then, or
the buildings.
The buildings, for sure.
The amount of people that are on the street. I do think there's, as I said before, like this whole looking down all the time is really unfortunate. I actually think that's something that happens in Australia more than overseas. I know when I walk down the streets of Paris or Italy or wherever, people actually have a lot more eye contact. But we seem to be, and I guess this goes back to the notion of how people use the streets. In Melbourne, people are commuting. They're just commuting on foot. So they're not necessarily looking around themselves to see what's going on. They're
very good
very
point.
focused on just getting from point
Yeah.
A to point B.
As opposed to people live in those big cities like Paris and Rome, and they're going to get their groceries 2 blocks down the street, or
They're living on the streets.
They're living
the
on the
street is
streets.
equally a part of their playground, and
Yeah.
whereas I think we use it much more as a commuting space.
I've noticed that actually I just came from Europe, I should say just, but about 2 months ago. And now that I'm reflecting after that, I do remember thinking, I don't see a lot of new phones. I don't see a lot of phones in people's hands. And when I do see them, they're just older and they're not newer phones. So I feel like Australia being such a tech savvy, tech forward country, maybe we're a little bit too reliant on the technology that we have in our hands.
Yeah. Yes, definitely. I mean, this is a bigger conversation, you know. The phone has become sort of like everybody's television and
Everything.
communication point, and it's sort of like a dock that, in some ways, that connects you to so many other things. I mean, you're using one to take
your videos, that's right.
at the moment. So, they're a powerful thing and they're a really big part of society today, but maybe there'll be a push back against them at some point. Film has become, analog film has come back again, and it's really nice to see a lot of people out shooting it. It slows things down a lot.
I mean, we're using the camera you have in your hand. It does have autofocus, but for the most part, it is, to me, still a quite analog kind of photography. You can still do manual focus. The markings on the lens give you the idea of, how to. That's one reason I ended up buying the same camera as you. And also, I've recently started using a fountain pen to take notes. No more typing.
Actually, it's a really nice
It is a nice
having
feeling.
a fountain pen, definitely.
It's everything's become so digitalized. I'm starting to crave more and more of that analog, the clicking, the changing the buttons on this. It feels really nice.
Yeah, it does. And actually, the whole fountain pen thing you were just talking about, well, children these days are not being taught how to
That's all right.
write. And so when they become adults, you still need to write. And it's
Handwriting,
kind of sad
spelling.
that handwriting is disappearing, and
For sure.
and it's a skill that you have to have.
Back, Sally.
We're back.
We're
Okay.
back after I've charged my camera.
Oh, good. Yes.
We talked about quite a few things, but I wanted to ask you about what I see you do is when we're walking forward, and in Australia on the left side of the street, you sneak your way on the right side of the street and you weave your way through the crowd, and you were telling me why you do that. Would you mind walking the audience through the thought process behind that? It's quite interesting.
Okay. So I kind of want to immerse myself in the action that's happening and turn my camera into a person. So it's kind of another character in the scene, and it allows me to get quite close to people, and I guess it's a bit of a trick in some ways to disarm my culprit at the other, my victim. Perhaps we shouldn't put those words in, but it's a way to disarm the people that are coming towards me, and it actually loosens them up a little bit. And I like the street for its the movement that happens between people and the kind of dance that happens.
The dance, yeah, you mentioned that.
And so if I'm weaving past someone, I'm disarming them to some degree because they've got to look out for me. And then I might double back on them and I'll apologise to them, but at the same time I've taken a photograph.
Yes.
And I make a beeline for whereabouts I enter the group based on where the character is that I would like to take a shot. So I will advance into a group of people hoping that person will hit the light in a particular position. Yeah.
And also, the next thing we talked about while the camera was off was around this scene that we're in. As I was telling you that for me, this is quite challenging to be making a photograph from. There's a homeless man over there shouting. There's music happening over here. There's people walking. The tram's going. People going. There's a fashion shoot up there. Everything's happening, right? So my brain's just going, I'm overwhelmed. It's not my comfort zone.
Yeah.
But you said that this is bringing you...
It actually brings me energy.
Energy,
Yeah,
right?
It's an energizing scene for me, and it allows my eye to be working in all different positions to try and have things happen and converge. And I guess I'm not wanting to shoot people all from behind or all from the front. I actually like the intersection point whereabouts people cross over. And I'll try and move myself into that or observe that. So I like these kinds of places where people are going about their business and moving in different directions.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's talent. I struggle. I struggle with this right now.
But of course, there's times whereabouts I would like something a little simpler. But I guess, and you help point this out, is that this is organised chaos for me. I'm not looking for a totally chaotic shot. I'm looking for layers. I'm looking for foregrounds, middle grounds, and backgrounds. I'm hoping that the characters that I've chosen to bring my camera up to will be a focal point, but there'll be other things, other stories going on in the same frame.
Same frame.
Yeah.
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 There was a photo you showed me earlier when we were sitting down having a coffee. It's the one that we said the light was flat, but then you had a lady on the left-hand side taking a photo of the lady kind of in the middle back, and then you had something in the foreground, I forget what it was, and then there was two people sitting down on the right-hand side having a conversation. That was 4 or 5 stories folded into one image.
So for me, that's I really like that. I like that I'm observing a scene and there's different things happening and I can make up stories to go around each one of them, and some of them are more obvious than others. It was unfortunate a little bit about the light on that, but it was very, very, I like bright, contrasty light or low light in the afternoons or the mornings. I wouldn't say I'm only a fair weather shooter, but my preference is to have a little bit more, edge in the light. But I like that. I like that there's different things going on and I can make up a story for each one of them.
Yeah.
And so can the viewer.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's a photo where I'd look at and spend a few minutes on, right? I mean, again, we're overwhelmed with the amount of imagery we see online, and a lot of us just scroll through the doom scroll thing, and it's hard to come up with an image that is unique, but also stops you and goes, oh, what's going on here? Oh, they've got this happening on this end. The right-hand side's got this story. Middle foreground's got this story. Middle background's got this story. And that, to me, had, again, 4 or 5 little stories unfolding in one image, which was incredible.
I guess your eye is being led around,
Exactly.
and then you kind of find connections, and I think that's a little more clever than just a blunt shot. But I do those as well.
We all do them. I think it's just, everyone's a little bit different in the style, and that, to me, it talks about, in my opinion, I think about your patience to be there and your foresight. Speaking of foresight, can you share the story about the Sydney photo? And I got to get these photos from you.
Yeah.
The orange dress with the boxes on George Street and all that.
Yeah. So I was walking down George Street. I think it was about 1 or 2 in the afternoon recently, and I noticed that there was all these coloured bollards, which are obviously there to stop people driving through, but each of them are they're in different colours, and the light was coming through between a building, which created this beautiful shard of light. And I noticed a car parked halfway down the street, and a couple of people got out of the car. They walked to the curb where I was standing, and they kind of discussed a restaurant they were going to, and so then they went back to the car. But when they went back to the car, an elderly gentleman got out of the car, and a woman in an orange dress. And the woman in the orange dress got back in the car, and the elderly man and the couple walked past me again. I didn't take any photos of them, and I waited in anticipation, hoping that the lady in the orange dress would join them at some point, and she did.
And she did.
I almost didn't get the shot because the photographer stopped beside me to talk to me as she was literally hitting the light, so I just ignored him and just kept on shooting. I think I got 3 frames, and each one of them had a slightly different leg.
Lit up part of the...
just the way in which her gait was on her legs created a nicer... So I chose the shot that looks more flattering.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
To me, as I mentioned earlier, that to me shows foresight. First of all, you were patient enough.
Yeah.
You saw a scenario, the lights, the colors on the street, and there's a street sign as well in the middle, the post. The colors go really well. Look at the color palette, is just beautiful. But then also you saw somebody coming out of a car that was wearing a dress, the color that matched your scene, and you were giving it 10 minutes, you said, right? Yeah. It's incredible, like that. To me, to have that foresight and the patience, something I don't have, but it's just
I guess
interesting
that's
to watch.
kind of classic fishing, isn't it? You know, look, I was really lucky on that occasion. Sometimes you can wait in a scene thinking something might happen and you anticipate something and it doesn't happen, and then you kind of go, oh, all right, I'll move on.
You move on.
But in that instance, it actually came together, and
You got to
the
keep
light
out
in
of it.
Sydney is really interesting, the way it kind of bounces around.
Let's talk about that, because I was going to ask you, obviously it's my first time, as I mentioned, in Melbourne with my camera that I do work with. I've been shooting at Sydney for a year and a half now, and you, Penny, Mark, Renata were in Sydney recently. And I saw the photos that you were posting on Instagram, not entirely different, still your style, but different to what I'm used to seeing from you. Could you walk me through, how as an artist or photographer that changes, your style changes, maybe not changes, the way you create, what you look for maybe changes depending on where you're at?
Yeah, I think there's a certain freshness that you get from being in a new city, in a new place. You see things differently. You don't have the day-to-day work life or familiarity with the area, so you tend to look at things a little bit differently. And the light, even though we're only an hour apart by flight, the light is quite different at different times of the year. The temperature's really different, which affects the air. And so I think you can sometimes see things that you don't see in your own city. Here in Melbourne at times I can just walk past stuff and not even notice it, and I'm sure you will notice something different about that. But in Sydney it's really beautiful because the streets are not, there are some straight streets, but there's not lots of straight streets.
Right.
And it's also hilly from one end of town to the other, so buildings are up and down the whole time, and so light can sometimes bounce around those a little more than they do in Melbourne. Melbourne, we have kind of these straight lines, and that can mean that in the heart of the day it's quite harsh, and you can have a few stops difference between the shadow areas and the highlight areas. So you have to work with that.
Of course.
Yeah.
Got to work with what you have. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Did you want to stay here, by the way? I want to keep walking.
We can keep walking.
I'd love to get your magical walking and shooting on the camera somehow.
Okay then.
If we can manage it.
Walking and shooting on the camera. All right. So.
Where do you want to go next?
The light.
What are you looking for? Like right now, are you looking at the light? Are you looking at the, because you shoot around here.
I'm looking at the light and the people, most definitely. I know that the light is kind of going to disappear soon in this stretch, so, but I would kind of hang out in this area, so I can kind of move around here.
Sure, let's move around a little bit.
And I quite like seeing.
É muito diferente.
It's kind of hard when you're working with a fisher. Okay, so maybe I'll go down to here and watch the people come across.
Let's go.
See if I can find a person. Even though that lady put her hand up before, I quite liked that she put her hand up because she was telling me, no, you can't take that picture. Yeah.
Watching Sally do her magic.
I need to wait for the next round of light since
You do. I've noticed you bend your knees and you get low.
it's usually so as I can get people's eye line about mine. I'm a little bit, it depends on the height of the person.
Okay.
Sometimes I shoot up because of the height of the person, but I try to, that's totally overexposed. Sometimes it's a gracious thing and it's kind of a respect thing about, I'm going to take your picture right now.
So
I'm
a little
kind
bit.
of, I'm not just stealing, I'm actually respecting you. I will sometimes also, if I want to take a photograph of people, I might kneel down on the ground if they're seated so as I can be at their head height to take a photograph.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
I sort of, I guess, bring different things out depending on the circumstances. It makes people feel a little less aggressive about what I'm doing.
Interesting.
Yeah, and maybe just go about their normal thing.
Sally, is there anything I haven't asked you that you want to talk about? I'm curious because we talked quite a lot before we got out.
I know.
We talked a lot when the camera was off. That's my fault. So I'm trying to remember if there's anything that I haven't asked you that we've spoken about.
I guess, you know, for a lot of street photographers, or any photographers, there's just an incredible amount of joy in it. And, and I think that what photography brings to my life is I guess just joy that perhaps I don't get in other areas. It's quite a solitude kind of moment, and it's a moment about me.
Yes.
And I enjoy looking back on images that I've taken of people and wondering what's going on in their world. I like almost the voyeuristic aspect. Even going to other countries, I find it fascinating what's happening in other cultures, and documenting that is really is a really enjoyable thing for me. Yeah, I don't know if that's something really that I needed to tell you, but
no, that's
there's
beautiful
definitely
though.
a sense of humanity and what's happening, and I guess my way of seeing it is different to yours or the next person's, and I like remembering. It's a little bit like a memory sake. You know, once that frozen moment has happened, it's there forever, and I hope it's honest enough. You know, sometimes it's not necessarily a full representation of a person, but it is of something that happened at the time. Yeah.
I think that's quite deep. I think that, you know, you're talking about, you're looking at that photo and you're thinking about what that person's going through in their life in that moment. That's quite deep. That's thank you for sharing that. I appreciate it. And I had another question for you, but I think I forgot about the question. So maybe we'll continue to...
I guess it kind of plays into that. We were talking a bit about street photography and documentary. And I'm really drawn to documentary photography. And you know, I think when I first came out of college, I was a graphic designer, and I worked on a publication that was based off the Sunday Times in London. And I was watching and reading and fascinated by the stories of the world. And there was lots, there's always incredible things, incredibly awful things, but also some really beautiful things that are happening around the world. And I think photography is an important medium to make sure that we don't lose
what's happening
around us, and we make sure that we tell those stories. And I think, whether that's street or whether that's documentary or actual, set up scenarios, I think it's really important. Yeah.
I agree. Are you planning on doing any projects with these thoughts that you've got? Have you got anything in mind?
Yeah, I've got a project that I've been working on for a long time that's primarily based out of the southern part of Italy, and it's very much around the traditions of Holy Week in the calendar. And I slowly kind of document different aspects of that and immerse myself in other people's worlds, and it's quite foreign to me. So I'm discovering more and more people.
As a podcast, I think it's more of a video.
Only if I'm allowed to take
it's a YouTube video, but let's get a few photos of you, gents.
What's it for?
For photography.
Oh.
I think you lost interest. Yeah, I thought so.
Alright, let's go.
See you
Bye,
later.
boys.
Thanks.
Is that going to be put on the news?
It's on YouTube.
What's YouTube?
Coffee and cameras.
Human Katuzzi, if you can find my name. Good luck. Spell that.
Yeah, they might struggle with that one.
Oh my gosh. So sorry, project in south of Italy you were talking about.
Yes. So I've been doing a project that is based around the southern part of Italy, and it's documenting the Holy Week, which has incredible amounts of traditions that happen in that region. I know nothing about it. I'm fascinated by it, and I spend a week or so, maybe 10 days, not every year, but with COVID, obviously it's been a couple of years. I'm going back again next year, I hope, and eventually I hope there'll be a book in it.
Wow.
And it's kind of intimate. I want it to be quite an emotive piece. I think that people kind of use the streets like a stage, and they're very raw in their emotions of how they work together and independently around this period. It's a sacred kind of time of year for some people. So hopefully that'll come to something eventually. But my street work will probably be a slightly different book at some stage in my life.
What drew you into this piece in Italy? Was there something specific? Were you there traveling?
I decided to take some time out of work back in 2014, and so I started it with a workshop in an area that I was always curious about. I'd been to Italy a number of times, but I decided that I would go to Sicily, and I stepped into a time that it was just foreign to me, and I thought it would be interesting, and I did this workshop and fell in love with just being there and seeing how I'd never seen people so passionate about something that was really community minded and had been going on for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years, and there's a certain amount of the old world that's still today practiced, and I think there's something lovely about that. Yeah.
Amazing. I can't wait to see the finished product when it's ready.
Thank you.
I'll be waiting. How much more time do you think you're going to need? So you go back when you can, once a year, spend a week or so there.
Yeah, so I think that there's a couple more years in it for me, just because the traditions that are practiced in small towns are all slightly different, and there's a few holes that I have currently with some of the more traditional ways in which they do things. So there's at least a couple more years of work to be done, and maybe even 3. I mean, there's been a couple of photographers that have done things in Spain, or there's also a gentleman in Sicily that does a lot of work, and they've been shooting for 20 years doing this. I guess it's a little like an ongoing festival that happens here in Australia. It's just that the fascination for me is in this Christian kind of thing. I'm not religious, but I'm curious.
You're curious about it. Amazing. Maybe if you have any photos on you after we...
Oh, definitely.
I'll have a look if that's okay.
For sure. Definitely. Yeah.
Awesome. Is there anything else that we can chat about?
I don't know that there is.
I think that's it. I've honestly enjoyed just meeting you again in person and chatting to you and learning more about you.
Thank you. It's been really a joy, and thank you for asking me to be a part of this.
It's my absolute honor, honestly. So can't wait to put this up for everyone to have a look at, and thank you again, Sally, for coming out. Appreciate you.
Pleasure. Thank you. Have a nice time here.
Thank you. I'll do. Thank you.